morning. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Benyar BY-5177M. This watch is available on AliExpress from Pagani Design AliExpress store for €42. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So this watch comes in a black cardboard outer watch box. As you can see, it has Benyar and the brand emblem in silver on the lid, and the flap of the lid is secured by two magnets, which is a feature I really like. Now inside is a foam protective piece which one removes, and the watch itself sits in a foam cutout panel as one would expect. So although it's a basic watch box, it is perfectly acceptable to use a cardboard watch box, bearing in mind it's a low tier price point piece at only €42. One also gets this basic owner's instruction manual. The user manual also details the terms and conditions of the international guarantee, and I'm pleased to report that this watch comes with a 12-month international warranty, which is very reassuring. It's translated into English, and there are several diagrams which detail the different functions of the automatic movement used in the piece, including the setting of the time. So useful read if you're unfamiliar with automatic movements. One also gets this Benyar guarantee card, and on the reverse there's a space to fill in the date of purchase, the reference number of the piece, which is BY-5177M, and the authorised dealer can stamp it. So you'll notice the similarity between this Benyar guarantee card and the guarantee cards used by Pagani Design. And the reason for that is Benyar, Pagani Design and Bersaga are all made by the same factory in China, so they use the same guarantee cards and also owner's instruction manuals. One also gets this pin tool, which is used for resizing the bracelet using the push pins. And one also gets this plastic Benyar tag, which has the Benyar brand logo and emblem embossed on both sides, and it's a nice touch. Lastly, one also gets this Benyar branded microfiber polishing cloth, and irrespective of the price point of a watch, I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth. So, with regards to the watch itself, this is the Benyar BY-5177M, and you can see it's clearly on homage to the Rolex Explorer. It has the same iconic dial layout of the Explorer with the 9, 6 and 3 large Arabic numerals which are applied, as well as the other indices, and the 12 o'clock index is a triangle. So classic Explorer dial layout means that it's clearly legible. He uses Mercedes hands, which are also copied from the Explorer. It's an homage to the Explorer, although the current version of the Explorer is 39mm case diameter. This is a 41mm case. It has a 50mm lug-to-lug measurement and a thickness of 14mm. The lug width is rather odd, it's 21mm. Now, usually with a 41mm case, one would expect the lug width to be either 20mm or 22mm respectively. The problem with having an odd 21mm lug width is that it limits the options of straps and bracelets one can put on the piece, because as I've discussed, 20 and 22 are the industry standard. So I think that Benyar have made a mistake by using that odd 21mm lug width on a 41mm case. Now, with regards to the case, I want to discuss this specifically. This watch is advertised on AliExpress as being made from stainless steel, and on the case back there is an engraving saying all solid stainless steel. So one would expect the case to be made from solid stainless steel, but in actual fact it's not. And I think it's a really bad thing to do for any brand to sell a watch and market it as solid stainless steel when in fact the case isn't. The case is made from zinc alloy, not stainless steel, and what they do is they plate the zinc alloy with nickel, and the nickel plating then gives it the appearance of stainless steel, but the problem is when the nickel plating wears off, it reveals the base metal underneath the plating, which is zinc alloy. The effect of nickel plating zinc alloy is it gives the zinc alloy a copper tone, so when this case begins to wear or it gets scuffs or scratches, the copper colour of the plated zinc alloy is going to show through. Now the other thing I'm very disappointed about is on the right hand flank of the case it has a scuff, and this is wholly unacceptable for a watch. This is a brand new piece and it arrived with a scuff on the flank of the case, so very disappointing. There's also something else I want to point out. As you can see, it has a stainless steel screw down exhibition case back. The centre section of the case back is glazed with mineral crystal. Nothing wrong with that. But if you look at the engraving on the case back, it says all solid stainless steel. There's a spelling mistake in the word stainless. It says stainless rather than stainless. There's no letter T. Just bear with me and I'll get the camera to focus. There, you can see the word stainless. It should say stainless. Now, regardless of this being a low-tier price point piece at only €42, it is wholly unacceptable for any watchmaker to make spelling mistakes in the engravings on their watches, and it's just very disappointing, and I think it's something that is inexcusable. So with regards to the rest of the specification, blue sunburst style, applied indices in the Explorer dial layout as I've discussed. If you look closely at the Mercedes hands, you can see they are too short. And that's another mistake of this watch. They should have scaled up the proportions of the Mercedes hands. With a watch, the minute hand should always meet the indices and also the chapter ring. And as you can see, the minute hand on this watch with the Mercedes hands, the minute hand does not reach the minute ticks, and therefore it is an indication that the hands are undersized. The other fault is if you look at the second hand, same problem. The second hand does meet the indices, but it doesn't extend to the minute ticks. The purpose of a second hand is to index the time in seconds, and therefore the end of the second hand should always meet the chapter ring, and that's a real disappointment. The crystal is Hardlex, which effectively is mineral crystal which has been coated with a scratch resistant coating. It's the same Hardlex material that Seiko use in their watches. Hardlex is really a compromise between mineral crystal and sapphire crystal, which is harder and therefore more scratch resistant. Coating mineral crystal to make it Hardlex is a better option than using mineral crystal, which is uncoated, but it's not as hard and scratch resistant as sapphire crystal. So with regards to the rest of the specification, it's 152 grams, so it is a heavy piece, bearing in mind that it has a zinc alloy case rather than solid stainless steel. And also it has hollow folded end links in the bracelet and a press metal 2-button push clasp rather than a solid milled stainless steel clasp. Now, the quality of the clasp is disappointing. It's always a disappointment to see a press metal clasp made from stainless steel rather than a solid milled clasp. With regards to the bracelet execution, it's very poor. Lots of play in the bracelet, there's lots of slack, lots of extra articulation. There's lots of play between the push pins and each individual link. As you can see, every single link has a wobble in it, and when one cumulatively adds up all of that play, it makes the bracelet very rattly and noisy. The other thing is the quality of the finishing on the end links is very poor. On the top side of the hollow folded end links, the brush satin finish looks acceptable, but when it opens up the bracelet, you can see there are areas inside the hollow folded end links which are unfinished. So very poor quality fit to the case, very poor quality fit between the end link in the bracelet and also the hollow end links themselves. The clasp, as I've discussed, is poorly executed, very lightweight gauge of metal. It's laser engraved with Benyar, which is acceptable. The action of the 2-button push release on the trigger of the clasp is also poor. It's got a light click, it doesn't feel secure, and also the quality of the pushing springs are very lightweight. It just doesn't feel like it's going to stay shut. So I would have questions on the reliability long term of that 2-button push clasp. With regards to the case back, it is finished to an acceptable standard. The case back is solid stainless steel, as one would expect, glazed with mineral crystal, which shows off the automatic movement with its skeletonized rotor. The movement is undecorated, but it does have blued screws, which make it more aesthetically pleasing. It's just a shame that they've engraved all solid stainless steel instead of stainless. So really the spelling mistake is eye-catching and something one cannot ignore. Now, I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how the piece fits on my wrist. I haven't sized the bracelet, I've simply taken the watch out of the watch box, and I'm pleased to report that the bracelet does indeed fit up to my 8-inch wrist. There you can see it. So I'm confident that this watch will fit up to even an 8.5-inch wrist. Now, the 50mm lug-to-lug measurement is rather long. As you'll know from my previous reviews, I consider 48mm to be the sweet spot. It gives a sublime fit, regardless of whether one has a 6 to 7-inch wrist or a 7 to 8-inch wrist, respectively. 50mm is too long for a 41mm case, and therefore there's an unsightly gap between the ends of the case and the wrist at either end. I really think they should have reduced the lug to lug measurement to 48mm, and as you can see 50 is just too straight and flat on the wrist. It actually reminds me of the case profile of a Steinhardt Ocean 1 42mm, which is known for having a flat underside to the case and a long lug to lug measurement of 50mm. So really 41mm with a 50mm lug to lug measurement is the incorrect proportions. It would have looked far better with 48mm. The proportions are also compounded by the odd lug width, as I've discussed. 21mm means that the bracelet looks too wide on the 41mm case. It makes the lugs look too thin at their points, and really the bracelet doesn't balance the head of the piece well. A 20 or 22mm bracelet would have looked much better on a 41mm case, and it would have given more versatile strap options. So the blue sunburst style is aesthetically pleasing, as are the applied indices in the Explorer dial layout. So on the wrist it does look good. But however, there is another defect I want to bring to your attention. When one first looks at this watch at a distance, it looks good. It looks like a good looking watch, but when one looks at the watch closely, one begins to see all the flaws. Underneath the crystal is a rehort, which is mirror polished. Now, usually rehorts underneath the crystal are made from stainless steel. They're either brushed into a satin finish or mirror polished into a flawless mirror finish. This rehort underneath the crystal looks like it's made from zinc alloy, the same as the case, and they plate the zinc alloy with nickel plating to give it a mirror finish. Same is the case with the bezel, which is also zinc alloy nickel plated. But there are inclusions in that nickel plating. They look like bubbles in the plating. And when one tilts the piece out in the light, because there's a lack of AR coating on the underside of the Hardlex crystal, it's highly reflective due to having a mirror polished effect. It looks like highly polished stainless steel. But one can see those inclusions, they catch the light, and it's very disappointing. Again, poor quality control. If one is going to use a zinc alloy rehort rather than stainless steel and zinc plate it must be flawless, because the zinc plating will make it obvious that there are inclusions in the finish, and it is therefore disappointing. With regards to the crown, it's made from solid stainless steel, which is coin edge finished. The cap is polished into a mirror finish on the dome. It's unsigned, as you can see. The crown execution is okay. It's a push-pull crown rather than screw-down crown, but that is acceptable bearing in mind the price point of the piece. It does work when one pulls out the crown to set the time, and it does feel okay when one pushes it back in. So let's do a loom test, and we'll see how the loom performs when it's charged up to its absolute maximum. Now, bearing in mind this is a low tier price point piece at only €42, I don't have high expectations with regards to the performance of the loom. I'm going to charge it up with my 100 UV LED torch, and we'll see what the absolute peak performance is. Right, so that's now fully charged, and it is disappointing. They've used Luminova, which is C3, as a cost-cutting measure. Of course, C3 Super Luminova would be better performance. It would glow brighter for a better length of time. The loom on the applied indices immediately glows to nothing. And as you can see now quickly on the Mercedes hands, it's also glowing to nothing. The loom really has negligible performance. It's actually, even for Luminova, very poor quality loom. And I think that they've cut corners too far by using very poor quality loom. As you can see now, there's no loom at all glowing. It's very, very weak. So, clear cost-cutting measure, very disappointing. They could have easily used C3 Super Luminova to upgrade the performance. So, with regards to the movement, what movement does this watch use? It uses the Homage caliber G2666Z. So, the Homage caliber G2666Z is made by Shandong Laochang Zhongtai in China, as one would expect. And really, the caliber G2666Z is a low-cost alternative to using the Seiko NH35A, which is a popular alternative. The disadvantage of this caliber G2666Z is it has hand winding, but it doesn't hack. So one cannot stop the movement dead, one cannot hack the second hand to set the time precisely to the second, and that is a disappointment. Really, with automatic movements, they should always have hand winding and hacking as useful functions. It has a disappointing 36-hour power reserve. Now, really, for an automatic movement, 40 hours is now the industry standard. That's what one would expect from a Seiko NH35A, for example. 36 hours is a very low power reserve. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz, so it uses the same frequency and beat rate as Seiko movements. And it has a stated accuracy of plus or minus 45 seconds per day. So that's a very wide accuracy. Plus or minus 45 seconds is very inaccurate. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to report that this one is actually running at plus 35 seconds per day. So although within the plus or minus 45 seconds per day of the stated accuracy, it is very disappointing. Can you imagine wearing a watch and it gaining more than half a minute per day? 35 seconds per day is just dreadful accuracy. This is the most inaccurate watch I have reviewed on my channel to date. It is the worst performing watch. So lastly, I will surmise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. The watch should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So the respective price point of this piece is €42. The quality is poor. I would say that it's one of the worst watches I have reviewed on my channel in terms of build quality, quality control, and also finishing. To get a spelling mistake in the engraving on the exhibition case back saying stainless steel instead of stainless is wholly unacceptable. To get a brand new watch with a scuff on the right hand flank is wholly unacceptable. Weak performance to the Luminova, as I've just shown you in the Lume test, and overall the quality of the finishing is very poor. So the watch is poor quality. What do I think of the value? Well, it certainly is an excellent value. I would say the value is okay, bearing in mind that it is €42. The watch is what one would expect for a Chinese-made watch that costs €42 with an automatic movement. I think it's a shame that they did not upgrade the quality of the Lume, and it's a shame that they did not use a better movement such as the Seiko NH35A, which is used in Pagani design watches. Now bear in mind, Pagani design and Benyar are both made by the same factory, and therefore it would be wholly possible for them to use NH35 movements rather than the Hongtai caliber G2666Z. The problem with this movement is it's unreliable. It has a poor accuracy, the build quality is poor, the quality control is poor, and even the performance is poor, plus or minus 45 seconds per day, and it only has 36 hours of power reserve. Doesn't even have hacking, so everything about the movement is poor. So overall, I would say I cannot recommend you buy this watch. I think the watch is poor quality, and I think it is okay value. And for the defects I've outlined, such as the abhorrent spelling mistake, it just cannot be recommended. So I hope you've liked my review of the Benyar BY-5177M. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.